Chapter 9 and the idea of a foreign currency transaction and also the idea of an exchange rate. We need to understand these concepts for the homework problems and just kind of in general, it's for the accounting rules that we're going to be looking at in this chapter. So what I have up here on the screen is exchange rate data here on the right for the countries that you see pictured on the left. Okay, what I did was I went online. This is an exercise I'm going to actually ask you guys to do. I went online and I downloaded 20 years worth of exchange rate data for the various countries you're looking at, or the currencies, I should say. If you notice, by the way, anytime you enter or you're looking at a chart or a visual, you want to take a moment to understand what it is you're looking at. On the x-axis, we have the years, and then on the y-axis, we have the value of the exchange rate, okay? And then each colored line represents a different currency. So this is Japan up here in green, and this is India up here in gray. And when I say Japan, I really mean the Japanese yen. And when I say India, I really mean the Indian rupee. And for each of these, the data point is the exchange rate of that currency in relation to the US dollar. Okay, so let's break down what that means. And let's just choose this data point right here. You can see it's a little blip here for the Indian rupee. And if we kind of use our chart basics, we can see this is in the 2014 timeframe, and the value is about, I'm going to say about 65. Okay, so I'm going to label this as 65. Now, these are indirect rates, okay, and that's important. And I have a whole other video on why that's important, but these are indirect rates. And what's important to note with that is that an indirect rate is saying how many foreign currency units can I access for $1, okay? So if I had $1, how many foreign currency units could I access? And the answer here with this data that you're seeing is with $1, I could access 70 or 65. I think we said 65, right? So I could access 65 rupees, okay? That is what this data is telling me here. And that's the exchange rate. The exchange rate there will be 65. I could state that 65 as a direct rate. And what I would do is I would do 1 divided by 65 and I would get a fraction, okay? I have a whole separate video on direct versus indirect rates. For now, I just want to point out either one, direct or indirect, is an exchange rate. And what the data that we're seeing here is this idea of how much of one currency can get me another currency. So if I have $1, how many rupees could I get for that $1? And in this example, it's 65 rupees for that $1. Now, conversely, if I had only 1 rupee, how many dollars could I get? And the answer is I couldn't even get $1, right? I get like a fraction of a dollar. So we need to be able to kind of think through this relationship. That's going to be part of your work with this chapter. Now, the second thing I want to note with this data and kind of some of what we're seeing is that all of this data, you'll see it's fluctuating over time, okay? We can see that the Japanese yen is fluctuating. We can see the Indian rupee is fluctuating. It's kind of the Indian rupee, we can see kind of like an upward trend. We can see this with all of these currencies. Now, this is a chart where the yen and the Indian rupee, and then the yellow, which I believe is, I believe that's Thailand on this chart. The yellow also is, they're all kind of higher indirect rates, meaning you need for $1, you can get a lot of that particular currency. And then we see a whole bunch of different currencies that are kind of scrunched below. And all that means is that for those currencies, $1 will get fewer of those currencies. So for instance, $1 will get you only a fraction of a British pound, okay? A fraction of a British pound. We'll be looking at all of this in detail in our homework problems. Also, I've got an exercise for you guys to do that'll be part of your discussion board activity for this chapter. What's important though is that exchange rates do fluctuate. And why does that matter? It matters because of this. If you're Apple and you're sitting in the United States, but you have operations in India, and those operations, and this is what is actually happening, those operations are being measured in rupees, okay? So you have actual Indian personnel working in, let's say, your Hyderabad or Mumbai office, and they are doing business for Apple, and they're accounting for things in terms of Indian rupees. Now, what will happen is those transactions need to roll up into a US dollar parent company of Apple. As the activity goes from rupees to dollars, we're going to see that this fluctuation related to exchange rates has to be accounted for, okay? That is exchange rate fluctuation. There is a way to capture it. One of your problems we'll look at it. We're going to look at the idea of a foreign exchange gain and loss, and that deals with a sale on account. But big picture, you just need to know that exchange rates do fluctuate. For our work in this chapter, we're going to be less concerned with the why of exchange rates fluctuate. I think that's a really interesting and important question to ask, the why. For your accounting work, though, it's less the why and more the what do we do with it? How do we account for that exchange rate fluctuation? And importantly, what do the accounting rules of GAAP tell us to do with that information? And that's some of what we're going to be learning about. I hope this is a fun chapter. We're going to take probably a couple weeks on it so that you have time to do the exercises, time to do the activity on the discussion board. And of course, I want you to keep in touch with questions if you have them, okay? Keep in touch with questions. Thank you.